I'm reading from late in my book Grimmish, where 4 characters are camping outside Charters Towers in Queensland. There's the narrator, who may or may not be me, Joe Grimm, who bears some resemblance to the historic boxer Joe Grimm, the goat, and Sachel, who is a refugee from an old short story. The other character who you meet is Pig Thug, who our heroes had hoped that they had escaped from after meeting him in a pub in Western Australia, and he bears some resemblance to a person who made my life difficult in high school. It's not so hard to sleep when your bed is the lap of night, blanketed by the ancient muttering of water, moving ineluctably from land to ocean. Is this the oldest sound of all? Slow, solemn, the steady decline into somnolence. And so we slept. There were night birds and the wriggle of reptiles in sand and riverbank bush and humans snoring, and sometimes the conversation of distant livestock, but it was all swathed in river sigh. And the mosquitoes and heat prickle didn't stop us drifting, and our sleep was like the river as well, that shut-eye state where all the dread heartstones carried through wake time are without weight or consequence. We slept, men on a riverbank. All over the world men were sleeping on riverbanks, all part of a single endless river, one vast family drifting through sleep to the susurration of one river, all doing our best to get through days, all seeking respite at night from fears and terrors, smothered and smoothed by sleep, sleep induced by the sound of solemn water moving from land to sea, the ancient endless movement, a loop without start or end. Men asleep, their troubles neatly folded and placed beneath their heads, placated by river whisper, murmur, rush or rumble. We slept. And then we didn't. A stockwhip crack, loud as the world splitting apart. I struggle swum from dream's depths towards consciousness, lost in the deep blue and panicked, suddenly stupidly groping for surface, lost and maybe too distant, just for that piece of then, and then breaking the meniscus into wake reality, hitting like a blare of trumpet. Awake then, knowing there'd just been a stentorian sound, guessing initially it was a widowmaker branch splitting from a gum tree. I looked at Grimm and the goat and Sachel and saw that they weren't pinned to the riverbank beneath a lethal section of eucalypt. Beloved Judy and 7 little Australians, always dying again in memory. End footnote. The crack that zagged us from deep sleep to consciousness was followed by a bellowed "Ha!" and another crack, and then hoarse snort, foaming muzzle, too loud toccata of hooves. It was pre-dawn, but summer had started, and night at that time is never completely night, and the others were woken and upright, and so we had a fair view of what was coming, rendered in deep blues and blacks, and the snarling, savage soundtrack that temporarily obliterated all river sounds. "Ha!" shouted Pig Thug, a blubbery, naked grotesque on a high-stepping Arabian horse. "Ha!" flourishing a stockwhip that looked longer than the Burdekin. "Ha!" crack! "Ha!" in front of his swinging whip and his roiling head-tossing Arabian and his quivering alabaster jelly carcass was a swarm of feral pigs, boars and sows, the stink carrying in front of them like a bow wave, rotted meat and diseased fangs, death. And you could see tusks on the males, red eyes like paired simulacra of the planet Mars in the night sky, rampaging through our camp. The corpse stink of feral pig breath, sweat with stench of poison secreted through every needle-bristled pore, the death stink washing across us, a shroud that might never be shrugged off. "Ha!" from Pig Thug, and he wheeled the vile beasts and then drove them back hard through the centre of our campsite, hooves and stink, devastating our makeshift beds and provisions and one disease-dripping razorback stomping straight through the middle of our campfire. The clatter-clang of our billy kicked away and trampled, a fine white cloud of ash thrown up and dusting the scene like northern Christmas snow. Pig Thug jammed his curled toenails, sharp as spurs, hardened over candles, useful for plucking out eyes, into the flanks of his steed and rocketed forward, careening high up the river bank and down river until he headed the surging pig stampede. And then the savage smack of his serpentine stockwhip, and he wheeled them again, and ha! And they lurched like grape shot hitting a wall and rampaged back through our camp, stinking feral hooves tangled in bag straps and spare garments and flour bags and boxes of tea and tobacco and notebooks and pens and photos of loved ones and amulets and every meagre possession of travelling men of limited means. The razorback ploughing back through the fire again, smart nimbus of red embers fanned out through blue-black pre-dawn, the gut-choking stink of those monsters, and then the worst stinking monster of all, Pig Thug, reaching one naked, sweat-drenched arm towards me from high on his noble Arabian and grabbing me around the throat and lifting me and hissing, snake voice and snake breath, the stink of blighted eternity, hissing, "You will never be free of this. You will never not be that frightened little boy. Never not be that unwanted outsider. No, not ever." And then flexing his corpulent arm, flicking me backwards and laughing as I fell agonisingly into splayed ashes, busted valuables. He whirled the whip above me and cracked it so hard that I could not hear the sound, could only feel the air as it was abused by the cruel snarling greenhide, and he raked the steed's midriff with his sabre toenails and trotted off. Sanchel limped over to the billy and used his fist to hammer it back into shape, scooped it full of burdekin water and started reconstructing the fire. He threw a handful of tea leaves into the billy, stirred it briefly with a eucalyptus leaf and went to wash feral pig flop off the enamel pannikins. The sun crept higher. The goat stretched and yawned and then shut its eyes for a while. And Grim and I accepted the mugs of bush tea and sat and let the day emerge.